Hello and welcome to the Southbound Sports Show. I'm your host, Richie Leahy, here with my co-host, Maddie B. Back on the show, and if you're watching the video, we have some new improvements where we're actually going to show some tweets and stuff that we're talking about, and this is our test run. So make sure you subscribe to us on YouTube, Southbound Sports. We're going to be bringing you some new video stuff coming this week, and you'll be able to see the new and improved video there anytime we post it once the show's over. At least that's what we've been doing, and you can watch the show live on Facebook Tuesday nights sometime after 9 o'clock. So let's get into our main topic. Last week we talked a little bit about it, but we had Todd Gurley signing with the Rams. Or no, he left the Rams. I don't even think we talked about this one. But he ended up signing with the Falcons, and then, of course, Tom Brady signed with Tampa Bay, which we kind of speculated at, but at the time we went live, we weren't 100% sure. But I think the Gurley one hits the hardest because that was one of the big talking points whenever Le'Veon Bell was leaving Pittsburgh. They wouldn't sign him to the big extension. The Rams signed Gurley too. Le'Veon Bell thought that he deserved more money than that, and Gurley didn't even get it anyway. They ended up cutting him to save a tax hit or cap hit. So what are your thoughts on that, Matt?
Well, I think that by signing Gurley, it helps Atlanta because now they're filling that gap left by Tevin Coleman. So they still have Devontae Freeman and they have Gurley that they can do a running back by committee, and it's going to help them. But I joked with you about this before. Atlanta is in need of defensive players. Their starting safety went down last year. They let Beasley walk. It's just like they're not acquiring, unless they plan on just acquiring every draft pick and spending all of them on defensive players. They really need to start addressing some needs on the defensive side of the ball, because ultimately, when you look back, everyone remembers them blowing the lead. But if the defense makes a stop, if the defense makes a play, then they cover for the offense not scoring late in the game. You know, I think it helps them, but you can't just pick offensive player after offensive player. At some point, you got to have a defense.
Well, the crazy thing is, we did joke about this, and we made fun of Atlanta last week because they seem to be going all offense, and then they bring in, easily the second highest profile free agent signing this season. I mean, you're not going to beat Tom Brady, but Todd Gurley was right there on the top of a lot of fantasy lists, and he's going to be a player that puts them near elite, at least from a talent standpoint, as an offensive roster in the entire NFL. And there's no way around it, so I don't really know what they're doing on defense, but they should be able to score some points going forward. And I don't even know where they stand, because now you have a division. I mean, they're in the same division as Tampa Bay. They're bringing in Tom Brady. The rumor is that Antonio Brown is looking to sign at Tampa Bay. They already have Mike Evans. And there's even rumors of Julian Edelman trying to get out of his final contract with New England to come down. So we could have a strange, high-powered offense in Tampa Bay, led by the greatest quarterback of all time, and then you also have the Atlanta Falcons with Matt Ryan and this high-powered offense. Both of them having, you could perceivably think that the defenses for both teams are going to be the weak link. And that's not even counting in the Saints. So, Drew Brees is still there. You're going to see some high-powered offenses in the NFC South, and that might be the most competitive division now in the NFL. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that's pretty fair to say. And you have Carolina being in the transition that you don't know what you're going to get with Matt Rule coaching there, and with Carolina releasing Cam Newton, what direction they're going to go at quarterback.
Yeah, and they went to total rebuild mode, I feel. So they're going to be the team that's going to get the Cardinals treatment last year. Whenever you bring in a whole new offensive philosophy, try to get some younger players. They just released Cam Newton. I think we're going to have a slide on that in a little bit here. But they're looking at a total rebuild from the point of this is our team identity. Now we're just going to start over. And if they're looking at it from a franchise standpoint, Tampa Bay's not going to last very long. And the Saints run isn't going to last very long. Tom Brady's old. Drew Brees is old. That's just a fact. Tom Brady probably has 2 years. So if I'm a Panthers fan, I'm not really worried about it. And I think we have a lot of stuff on their moves that they're bringing in to stay competitive. But at this point, I would almost feel like let's build for the future. I mean, Kuechly retired. They had a lot of transition. You pushed out Cam Newton. At this point, who cares? Like, you're not going to compete with Tom Brady. You're just not. So let it go and start to build. And if they want to, just build a defense and let Rule do his thing on offense and see if it can transition into the NFL where they can have a successful high-powered offense. Let's go ahead and see what we have up. I can't remember what all we put on here, if it lets me even go through it. But let's go to our next one. The Jaguars signed Tyler Eifert to a 2-year deal. And this is a big one because the Bengals had one reliable tight end, and that was pretty much it. Now, he did get injured a good bit, but for the Jaguars pretty much just letting people go, I think this is a big deal for them. And I know you're a fan of his, so what do you think this fit is going forward for the Jaguars?
I definitely think it's a good fit for them. If when he stays healthy, and this has always been the sticking point for him, is when he stays healthy, he's a really good tight end. He gets a lot of production, fantasy wise. He does a phenomenal job. But over the last couple seasons, I mean, much like a lot of the players with the Bengals, they've been really injury prone. They've had a lot of issues with keeping guys healthy. And who knows, maybe a change of scenery might do wonders for him.
Well, I think with Minshew coming from that West Coast offense or the air raid with Mike Leach, the tight end in the NFL can really be a good outlet for him. So if you're looking for a fantasy tight end, especially if you're in a PPR league, this might be the biggest news for you in free agency. Because at Eifert with his injuries, I think you can get him kind of cheap, potentially. And with Minshew being passed first, I'm sure he's going to rack up a ton of points. And he was successful in Cincinnati, so I don't even want to understate that. I think that it's a good position for him going forward. And for fantasy owners, this move is a big deal, which is why I included it on this week. So do you have anything on that, Matt? I know you're usually high on him for fantasy.
Yeah, he was one that he's been on my team a good bit. Actually, the thing that I kind of laughed about as I was reading some of the different reports on this was, what if Jacksonville goes after Jameis? I know I've been really pushing to try to will him to Pittsburgh, but realistically, I don't know that with Pittsburgh's cap issues that it's even plausible for them to sign him. But Jacksonville could be a place that they bring him in. That if he realistically does that and goes there, what does that do, or what does that say to Minshew? Because they move Foles and they're saying it's your move. And then they bring someone else in. You know, does that hurt his confidence going forward?
I don't even see that being a problem, and I would be shocked if they made a move like that. I feel like that would be a poor front office decision because they're different style quarterbacks, like we've talked about, and I don't think Jameis fits in there. If they're going with Minshew, go with him. I mean, Jameis is more of that pro offense style quarterback. That's what Jimbo Fisher basically ran at Florida State, one of the last teams to keep running that in college. And then, I mean, Nick Foles was very similar in his style, and he didn't really fit with Jacksonville, and I think that's why they let him go. So for them to sign Jameis, I think you're just going to go back in time, and they're just going to relive some of the issues that they had last year. So I almost wish that they would focus more on getting Minshew some weapons, because I really liked him, and he brings a winning pedigree. That's something that a lot of quarterbacks you can't teach. You're either a winner or you're not. I mean, even like with Nick Foles winning the Super Bowl and things like that, Carson Wentz, when he came into the league, he wasn't known as a pure winner. So you're taking a gamble on a guy, and at some point you have to decide as a franchise, are we going to go with the guy with the more measurables, or are we going to go with the guy with a winning pedigree? I know Jameis does have that, at least in college going back. But I feel like if he would fit into a system that was more to his style, he would have a better chance of being successful anyway. Now, Jacksonville, I don't really know how far gone they are since the playoff win a few years ago, but they've been kind of imploding. So to see them try to get an outlet, I wonder if they're going to try to get back into that power offense, get some tight end outlets out there, let Minshew sling the ball around and see if their defense can hold. But at this point, they could be in pure rebuild mode. Speaking of weapons, the Packers just signed Devin Funchess, one of the Carolina guys. And I know he wasn't with Carolina last year, but just the moves that Carolina had made that we mentioned. He was a starting receiver for them with Cam Newton a few years ago. Kind of stuck around. It seemed like he had higher upside. Went to the Colts. They had their own issues. But now he's making his way into Green Bay. And I think it's a big move for them because I've never really felt threatened by some of the receivers that they had in Green Bay. I mean, you had Cobb with a ton of drops. So if you get someone out there that is a bigger target, possibly is able to hold on to the ball, and I don't know what his drop rate was with the Colts, but getting them into a position where they're actually building the team around Aaron Rodgers instead of just kind of saying, okay, we're going to focus on the defense and then you do your thing. I think it's surprising that they went and signed him, but what are your thoughts on it?
I think it's an okay signing. What's the best way of using him though? Is he more tight end? Because I feel like he's a bigger bodied receiver.
Well, he played tight end in college, but more of a split tight end. That was in the old Brady Hoke system.
Because that's where I think he kind of fits because he's in that if they use him as that hybrid H-back type player, that I wonder if that would be better suited for him. I just don't know how they would plan to use him because I feel like I don't know.
It's a fair assessment, but with the way Aaron Rodgers kind of, I don't know how to put this, but he makes his own plays because things break down a lot around him. He's able to extend it sort of like Ben Roethlisberger does. I think having a big body like him would be similar to how they had Plexico Burress. You just have the bigger receiver on the outside, and then you don't really rely on him all the time, but he's able, just because of his size, to pull defenders away, that you can get some openings and have some big-time plays to him downfield if you get him one-on-one. And then you're able to give your other receivers a little bit of space. And I think that's how Carolina tried to use him. But then they also made some weird decisions around the same time where they let Steve Smith go and some of their other smaller, quicker receivers. And then they had mainly bigger receivers. They never had anyone that was able to get quick in space. So it'd be interesting to see how this pays off for Green Bay going forward. But you're right. How are they going to use them? Where are they going to put them? And that's something that we're going to find out. Let's see. Next one. Panthers signed Robbie Anderson to a 2-year deal. So it's interesting because I always thought he was overvalued for the Jets. I feel like he should have put up bigger numbers than what he actually did, especially in terms of fantasy. And now you're going to Carolina. And I don't think this is going to be a big of an impact as what people think, because I don't think he has lived up to his potential. But what's your thoughts, Matt?
I think it's they let Funchess go and they signed Robbie Anderson. So I mean, if he has anywhere near the production, it's a 1-for-1 swap out. And if they're going to look to run more, downfield vertical stuff, then maybe it's a better move for them.
That's probably true. I don't really know what the new offense is going to be, but building guys, and I would assume that Matt Rule had a key in this coming back into his system, that we will see what happens and if it's going to fit his offense. I think that's going to be one of the big things. Is it going to fit in his system? And what system is he trying to build? Is he going to try to bring in his own quarterback this year? Because that's what happened whenever Arizona started their rebuild. They built it around Kyler Murray. What is Carolina going to do? And are they going to keep with what they had on the field last year? I don't really know. But we'll see. We'll get a big hit coming soon whenever, we don't even know what's going to happen with football season. Because there's already been rumors that some of the training camp stuff might be pushed back. And then you're looking at, I don't want to say an accelerated season, but that's some extra stuff. We'll save for the final bell if you want to stick around to hear some of the rumors that are flying.
Well, here's a random tidbit here that I saw as we were looking through our show notes. But with Robbie Anderson, he played at Temple for Matt Rule when he was coach there. And they recently signed quarterback P.J. Walker from the Houston Roughnecks, who also was quarterback when Rule was at Temple. So you have the quarterback, you have the wide receiver, and you got the coach all reunited from Temple Tough to Carolina.
That's pretty interesting. I didn't even think of that, to be honest. But we did have P.J. Walker later whenever we get into our XFL talk. But I don't know. Maybe he knows what he's doing then, doing the old Steve Spurrier, getting all his old players back together, and then whenever it fails, blame someone else, right?
Worked for the ball coach.
Not a slam on my man by any means. I love him. Please call into the show sometime if you want to. Any other free agency moves that you saw coming up before we get into our high tempo stuff?
Let me double check here.
I mean, you're right about the Steelers. When you don't have cap room and you're redoing a bunch of contracts and stuff to try to get under, I don't even know if they make a move. Luckily for them, they don't have a high first-round draft pick where you have to have millions of dollars slated based on wherever you draft to put towards that rookie contract. That might help them out a little bit, but like you said with Jameis, is he going to command a contract that large somewhere else?
Well, I think with the minimum, because he's been in the league, I think it's gonna set where he can sign at. So he may just already be priced out of their price range.
And that might be priced out of the league at that point. Because you see a lot of veteran quarterbacks like that then get processed because no one wants to touch him at that price. I mean, look at Colin Kaepernick. He came back with the 49ers. They gave him the minimum offer, whatever, it was like $14 million. He said that wasn't enough. No one's going to touch you for anything higher than that. So I hope it's not a situation like that. And I would love for Steelers to be able to find a quarterback in that situation. And I kind of have the same bad feeling for Cam Newton. You're coming off a crazy contract before, being the number one guy in the league, came close to winning a Super Bowl. But now you need another team to try to come in and see what's going to happen. Are they going to sign him with the big contract? Is anyone going to give him an extension? Or is he going to try to fill into a backup role? I don't even know. Just happened. Everyone knew it was going to come. I think it was announced 5 hours before we started this stream, so we'll see what gets into it. Let's spin away from the NFL stuff and get into high tempo. Matt, I know you had the first one on the 76ers, so I'll let you take it.
Well, I'm glad that the Sixers ownership changed their mind, because it was announced earlier that they were going to cut the number of days that staff were going to have to report, but that they were also going to ask them to reduce their salary, try to chip in and help out. Where everyone else was trying to help pay salaries for support staff and keep people going during the coronavirus outbreak, the Sixers were like, you just take a pay cut and sit at home and come in not every day, just come in most days. So I'm glad that they kind of changed their mind, and you saw that social media actually did good for a change, where people put the pressure on the management. And the thing that pissed me off with it was, how much money do you really need? Like, for the owners and different people, is it really that much of a difference? Is it really that much of a big of a deal? Like, how many millions do you need before you just say, oh, maybe I need to just look after our people and not get every person infected?
Well, that's a big thing, and this is speculated not just for sports. I'm surprised that they actually tried it, but people have been petitioning or at least pushing for a 4-day work week instead, so you'd have a 3-day weekend. I don't think they normally cut your 5th day salary, though. So basically, they're giving you 4/5 of the salary for 4/5 of a work week. I think normally when they say, we're going to go to 4 days a week, they make you work 4 10s instead. So you're still putting in the same hours. But then again, what are they really doing? I mean, this could be a time where, and I'm surprised more leagues and teams don't do this, but they could really push some of their content. And I might as well bring it up here during high tempo, but the NFL is giving away Game Pass right now that you can go on. Is it NFLGamePass.com or something like that? Search for it. It's free until the end of May. Since there's nothing going on, they talked about having the draft behind closed doors. You can go in and watch any football game going back to like the 2009 season maybe. So you have a lot of football that you can actually watch. And I'm surprised that more and more teams, whenever you have staff that are there, they're not actually working the gate. Why aren't they having them just do stuff on social media? Because you're paying them already. They're going to be at home, so they can work from home, because I would assume most of them have phones. And even if they don't, they can kind of work around that. But just say, hey, your job right now is to go on social media, find old game footage on YouTube or whatever, or here's some stuff from the NBA, find your best plays, and just start to tweet it at your friends or whatever. Very easy to help keep sports in the minds of people, because I'm worried that like people are going to start to think, okay, well, we haven't had sports for so long. When they start back up, are people going to just go back to watching them? I would assume there's a good bit of the population that's just going to be like, you know what? I decided to try video games because there was nothing else on, and now I'm hooked, and I'd rather do that than sit and watch a baseball game or sit and watch a basketball game in the middle of March that means absolutely nothing. Like, you can go, I saw someone put it this way, like, people should realize now that they're going to have extra money instead of paying for parking for these events, trying to get your family there, paying for concessions. You're stuck at your home, but now you can do all kinds of things. People are probably bulking up their television entertainment centers. I would imagine they're back at home. If they do the stimulus checks thing where everyone's going to get some money, I would assume people are going to buy bigger TVs and stuff because they're building their own home movie theaters. Even movies are letting you stream right now. So they should be getting in on this, and maybe it will push a lot of the leagues to get away from blackouts. That's my hope. But I'm seeing stuff like this. It's almost like, why would I support the 76ers? And I've been on here before talking about people are loyal to the teams, but sometimes you got to look at the owners. I mean, like the Pirates. They announced that they were doing like their $1 million whatever towards staff. You shouldn't even have to wait to do that. You should almost want to do it, not wait until Major League Baseball comes around and then pat yourself on the back, because that's what every other team is doing. Like, try to go above and beyond. If you're trying to get loyal fan support, step in and do the right thing. Like, there are other owners that are doing this way before anyone else, and I think a lot of people could start to see that, especially with social media. You don't have to be loyal to the local team if it's run by a bunch of assholes. You just honestly don't. Like, why would you buy any gear that supports a guy like that? And that's my final statement on it. You have anything else?
Nope. That was pretty much what I thought. Especially, like, it's not like this is a weekend thing. This could potentially be, depending on how people respond to this latest round of stay at home and try to self-quarantine, whether it gets picked up and you're being mandated to stay home.
Yeah, and it's not just the 76ers. They also own the New Jersey Devils, I believe. At least that's what it seems like from this tweet. So you're looking at it, like I said, multiple owners across different leagues. Even though you live in Philly, they have their own hockey team. I mean, you could be a fan of different teams, whatever you want to do. But at some point, you got to realize they're just people making decisions, and like, this is a poor decision. There's 0% chance, and like I said, you're just having them cut a day of their work, and it's not because they can't find work for them. It's just because they don't want to pay them. Because there are tons of things you can do, especially sports, like I said, clip highlights, do whatever. And very easy for someone just to go on and say, like, hey, for your day, you're going to have to send 50 tweets or write a blog post or something. Anything. Just to help with our marketing, because right now, we're not getting any advertising because we're not on TV. So it's your job. We're already paying you. That's what I want you to do. And I think you can give people jobs that are just hanging out and normally wouldn't be doing that kind of thing to push out some positive stuff. Like they could even do at-home workouts. Get some of the players to come on and share some of their at-home workouts and things like that. That could get them new fans. So there's ways to get creative with it. 76ers, if you want, or any sports team, just call me up. I can give you some ideas, help you out. Mine, the new Los Angeles Rams logo. And I'll just say, before I even get into it, the color scheme is very close to Golden State. And growing up on the outside of Pittsburgh, I easily identified Pittsburgh teams because they all share the same color scheme. It was close to the city. Not a lot of cities have that unity across their sports teams. And I think that it really fractures fans. And that's right after I'm talking about not being loyal to cities. But if you're growing up and you're trying to get young fans, one way to do it is Golden State was hot in basketball. They might be a year or two late. Why not try to leech off that and redo the colors? What I don't like is the logo itself. Why? Why are you rebranding? The Ram looks pretty poor. I'll be honest. It looks like I could go on clip art and make that myself. If I could draw it, it shouldn't be used for a professional sports team. Let's be honest. I mean, I guess the Steelers logo I could draw or whatever, but if you're trying to do an animal, like look at what the Detroit Lions did. Sweet. Easily recognizable. It's like the leaping lion thing. That Ram, just go back to the old helmets and just recolor them. I mean, I'm fearing because Tampa Bay is supposed to be releasing a new uniform too with Tom Brady in like April, I think was their original. I haven't seen that it came out. I saw a lot of people tweeting fake versions of like the old Buccaneer with the knife in his mouth, but it was actually Tom Brady's face. So like if they did something like that, I would laugh and think it was awesome. Because that would be going all in. You're like, hey, we have these new uniforms. It's actually just Tom Brady's face. I would buy one just because I would think that's funny. But like when you don't have anything like that and you roll out this Rams logo, come on. Well, you could do better than this, Matt. What are your thoughts?
My first thought when I saw it was that if you take the gold horns off, it almost looks like an alternative decal for Pitt. The way that I first looked at it. You know, I think LA went from being the Rams with the white logo to moving to St. Louis and rebranded themselves around the time of them being the greatest show on turf and then relocating. They're a program that their team doesn't have a true identity. They just flip flop every couple of years because when you can't consistently win, you just gotta just keep rebranding till it works.
Yeah, but didn't that end up being just the colors? Like, weren't the old ones very similar? And I'm trying to look it up to see, and I'm not going to be able to bring it up. But I thought whenever they went from LA to St. Louis, all they did was update the color scheme. Like, I thought the Ram was very similar, if not the same.
Yeah, it was a white Ram, and then when they went back to more of the traditional colors.
Yeah,
But then they didn't win the Super Bowl, so when you don't win the Super Bowl, you have to change your colors. Didn't you know that?
Well, I like I said, I could see it being part of the city or whatever. And I don't even know if people will be able to see this, but it would be like this blue Ram logo. But then it was like the same one. They just colored it gold. And these are poor pictures, but all they did was change the color scheme. Instead of being blue and white, they added gold into it. And so the logo's changed, but you're using the same Ram. I would have been 100% fine with them keeping that same Ram and just changing to these colors. I would have thought, nice. Go after the Golden State market. Try to become like a unified California thing. And to be honest, I think if they would have went that route and just changed it to the Golden State Rams, why not? Golden State is the entire California. You're hitting how many markets? You can move anywhere. Like, why put multiple teams in LA like they're talking about? Then you're fighting for fans. Then you're like going back and forth and all this other stuff. There's no real identity. I mean, the Raiders moved up and down a bunch of times. The Golden State Raiders that doesn't sound good at all. But why not the Rams? Go for it. Embrace the entire state. Then you can move up and just follow the Raiders. Just bounce back and forth. Whoever gets you the best deal on a stadium. Can't get fans, whatever. Who cares? Because now they have what? Are the Chargers official? Are they the LA Chargers now?
I believe so.
So now you don't stand out at all. Because right now, Matt, this looks almost identical to the Chargers colors, right?
Close, because the Chargers have the powder blues.
And they also have like a stupid bolt-looking thing that looks very close to this new horn.
Well, this is good because then when one of the programs fold, then they can just keep using the same logo. It's like, no, we're all LA.
They could just take that, like the crescent moon, and just put it around the stadium, and then fans are far enough away that they'll either, depending on who they're a fan of, they think, oh, that's the Rams horn. Oh, that's the lightning bolt. Very similar. Same color. You just don't make it unique. Just have that moon logo. That's what they should do. No identity. It's like they don't even care anymore. They're not even trying at this point. Why be a fan? That's my thoughts on it. Let's get into the XFL stuff, and then we'll go off onto some other topics. The XFL, Matt, right now, before I get into the players that have signed, because let's get into them real quick. I only have a couple on here anyway, but Beatrick Nichols, the XFL's interception leader, signed with the Saints. And then we talked about it earlier, but PJ Walker reunited with Matt Rule and is now a Carolina Panther. But looking at this, I'm glad that the XFL, and they worked on it, I think it was last week, but they worked on a deal where they had a year contract, and the way it initially ended was, I think in the summer, they were able to negotiate with NFL teams or something like that. It was somewhere after the season and after the draft. They were able to try to make it to a training camp. Because the season isn't going to happen now, they let them sign early, which I really liked. Because they didn't have to do that. They could have stuck the course and said, you know what? We could even, if we play it later, we could try to finish the season sometime. If things start to open back up here in the next month or so. But they said, no, you know what? We're going to stick with our TV partners. We had good numbers. I mean, did they even fall below 1 million once? I don't even know. It not on regular TV. Maybe on cable they fell below 1 million, but they averaged over 1 million. Those were good numbers. So next year I would assume they're coming back. But I want to get your thoughts. What are your thoughts on the future of the XFL?
Well, I think that it's definitely going to come back. And I was thinking about this. One of the things that I think could make the XFL unique is treating the XFL like the way junior colleges treat players, where they bounce, like if a player's in college and they're having they're having trouble on the field, like getting playing time, or they have some kind of character issue that they need to like show to bigger schools that they can handle the things that they need to do. They kind of go the junior college route. I think for the XFL, what it does is it's going to give a lot more players that opportunity that their college playing career is done. And for looking at guys that maybe they get false information, this also gives them a safety net. That I decided that I was going to go the NFL route. I didn't get drafted. I feel like I should be a pro. They can go to the XFL for a year or two and prove that they're good enough to play at the professional level and attract those looks from the NFL GMs that they may otherwise not get a fair shot with.
And you make a good point, because I wonder what will happen to players that almost don't get drafted because of off-the-field issues. Now they're given an outlet where they might have the talent, but because of something that happened, they're not going to get a shot taken at them. Now you get to the XFL where you can prove that you're going to say, hey, I'm going to stay clean, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. It gives them a league to go to that otherwise they wouldn't have, and they would be on the streets or doing whatever after that, because most of the time, those guys that do get into trouble, they don't end up getting their college degree, if we're being honest, and they really have nowhere to go. So, gives them another outlet, and I like it, especially because like arena football is not around anymore, right?
Correct.
There's no more outlets. You can try the Canadian Football League, but if you don't stick there, I mean, like look at Johnny Manziel. He had a chance with the AAF, didn't work out. Now he was begging the XFL to pick him up. I mean, you can have so many shots, but whenever you blow them, at some point, no one's going to care. So this gives them a chance to fill that void.
The other thing that I like potentially with having something like that is that it's going to force the league to not get so overly technical. Like if they're constantly having players turn over from the XFL to the NFL on a yearly basis, they're not going to have as much time to dedicate to players going, with the same system year in, year out, where you're getting some of the things that we've complained about with the NFL, where you're getting the same players in the same systems, getting recycled back and forth. I don't know that you're going to get that in the XFL because you're only going to be there for a limited amount of time. The amount of depth that you can really get into in that short period of time, I think, is going to handcuff offenses and defenses from getting really overly complicated because there's not going to be enough time for them to truly get all the work in that they need to get done.
Well, that's why I really liked how they had it set up originally, because they had 8 different coaches and then they had 8 different styles of play. And then that there's a good split in college where a certain number run the air raid, a certain number do the West Coast offense or whatever, then a different one does like the Rich Rod where they're doing the spread focused on the run and things like that. And then by having the XFL, you're able to have these coaches pick programs that they can identify with and then give their players a pipeline. So depending on what offense you played in college, now you're given a chance in the XFL because it seemed like each team had their own offensive philosophy, and that gave you somewhere to go on a professional level, where the XFL, like you said, that doesn't happen. You either fit that pro-style offense, even though they've tried to expand it, it's very slow, and it still looks the same across the other offenses anyway. They're still going back to having 2 tight ends. Like, look at the Ravens. They just let their tight end go. We talked about it last week. What about during the season? What about in the playoffs? It didn't even work. Like, they didn't go all the way in, and once playoffs hit and they were able to make them one-dimensional, that was it. Playoffs over. Like, go home. So, in the XFL, now you can use that system, like you said. You might only get the players for a few years, just like the college football system. Why not try different things, keep it simple, and try to innovate a bit, and try to show off some of these guys, and let them see what happens. I think another big thing would be, and I know they didn't get rid of like the city names and stuff like that, but to try to build an identity around the mascot more. Because you still have like some NFL teams where people are fans of like the Steelers. No one really says like, hey, I'm a fan of Pittsburgh. they usually identify with the mascot more in the NFL because they have some more unique mascots. And I think that's where the XFL could really try to push that and try to keep that identity going, where you build fans of the mascot and the team that way, so that when players cycle through, it doesn't really matter. I know college has a built-in advantage there because a lot of people come through as alums, and so they already have an attachment to the school. So it really doesn't matter if the players change. You're still going to be attached to that school. But in the XFL, why not try to do something similar where you have like an outreach program? You're trying to connect with different people and trying to get a connection with them, with one of those teams. And so then that way, it gives them a reason to tune in. And I think the only negative I saw, and it's my last thing I had on this, was they were already looking at expanding. And that's the one thing that I didn't really want them to do. And for that same reason, you already have a couple of teams. You don't really have any loyal fans yet. I mean, it's almost impossible whenever you only played a couple weeks. Why not try to build that by doing a couple things that you had slated before you expanded? Keep it at 8. Build the video game. Build a bunch of other stuff like social media. You had the gambling. I guess it was basically gambling where you tried to pick the score on the app and they were giving away $25,000. Why not keep something like that going? Like, I don't know what the legal whatever stuff would be, but why not have like a skills competition where people can tune in and do that in quarantine? Like, why not do it on your social media? Try to build your fan base by giving them something to watch. Like, say like, hey, we're this team. We're going to try to throw a football at this many set targets. And then you have each quarterback or whatever, the coach, go through and do the drills and try to match it up. Have people try to tune in that way and try to build some type of connection with the coaches. Because that's another thing too. College coaches are usually pretty popular. Think of Coach K. He's almost the same as Duke. People either point him out or say Duke. They really don't distinguish the two apart. When he retires, what's going to happen? Are people still going to hate Duke? I don't know. Are they going to fall off? In college basketball, it's not like college football where coaches seem to change more often. In basketball, coaches seem to be there forever. Forever. Syracuse, same coach since like the 80s. Same with Duke. It just goes around. It seems like it's really weird in that sport compared to football. And maybe it's because of like the changing philosophies and things like that get people pushed out, plus higher money being thrown around. I don't know. But that's my final thoughts. What you got anything else to close up or anything you want to hit on that I talked about?
No, I want to see it come back. I want to see the league grow because it's good for not just the NFL, but just for people interested in the game. Because the more you're around it, the more you're exposed to it, the more advances are going to come from it. So I think it's good all around.
I would also like to see them talk trash on each other. Like, try to build up some rivalries between the teams. And maybe that's just like childish or whatever, but I think that would be another big thing that could really get people to tune in. Like, now's your off season. People know what the mascots are. They know what the teams are. Why not have like the Defenders players, or not even players, just the social media start to take shots at New York or whatever team's closest to them. Start to get in some jabs about like, yeah, remember whenever we destroyed you? Blah, blah, blah. Here's some highlights from that. Things like that really get people attached and wanting more. Because if you just go dark and all your posts are about your players going to the NFL, all that people are going to think about is the NFL then. Like, they're not going to want to tune in. They're going to be like, oh yeah, that guy signed. The NFL draft's coming up, right? I'm going to tune in for that. Instead of thinking like, when's the next XFL event coming on? So they need to be proactive and not just be reactionary like a bunch of other leagues. But I think that's the last thing I had on here. Anything else you wanted to hit on football-wise?
Not too much football-wise, but just check out the website and continue to support the show. We like it.
Yeah, I know this show is probably going to end up a little bit shorter than the others, but really there's no sports going on. So we're messing around with the format. The new Facebook thing, I think, kicked us off. Sounds like Skype has been giving us some feedback the last couple weeks. I don't know if it's because of tons of people now working remote, and so we're going to have poor connections. I don't know. So I apologize. We're trying to improve all that stuff. I don't know why Facebook kicked us off. We haven't had a disconnect like that in, I would say, months, if not a year. Like, it's been a while before or since we actually got kicked off. But I'll be uploading this again. But just in case you're wondering why it went live for a bit but wasn't the full show, it wouldn't let me reconnect. Normally, it just reconnects and picks up wherever, and then I can just upload the full show after, but didn't let me do that. Like I said, we're trying to fill the void with some different projects and stuff coming to Southbound Sports, so definitely check that out. We had some stuff sent with us, shared with us, so check out our social media. You can go on Twitter at SBound Sports, get a lot of that on our website, but we're trying to work on getting everything up to date, so you have that. There are some other big things going on with the quarantine stuff. The Olympics have been pushed back to next year, which I wonder how that's going to throw off the cycles, because a lot of these sports, they're not big-time competition sports, and so you have cycles built in as qualifiers that start like the very next year. Olympics are over. Let's get into the preliminary qualifiers the next year. Now everything's going to be pushed back. So it's not just going to affect these Olympics. It's going to affect the qualifications for the next one. And how many people were giving it one last go? And by next year, they're going to be aged out. Because you have to think, like, you drop a couple tenths of a second off your sprint or whatever, you're done. So some people, I mean, there's going to definitely be different winners next year because it got pushed back. So I feel bad for all those athletes out there that were competing. I don't know what they do with qualifiers now. Do they keep everything the same? Because I knew they were running some qualifier sprints in Spain and stuff like that to try to get around it, but it's crazy. And so there's really nothing else sports-wise going on. The only thing that's happening is the NFL stuff, the off-the-field stuff. So we'll be trying to get back into that next week. Hopefully we get some better news of whenever sports are going to start back up. But in the meantime, we'll just be chugging along. We'll probably start to get into some football strategy type stuff since we're in the off season anyway. So if you have anything that you want to learn about, reach out to us and let us know. And thanks for listening, and we will see you next week.